Hello, this is Meg Howard from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. We're about to get started, but probably give it another couple minutes for people to join the call. So just everyone who's on already, thank you for being prompt, but we'll just sit tight for another couple minutes. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this is an informational webinar about how to apply to Mass DEC's community programs, and we have a special guest appearance from Amanda from Mass Save, who's going to talk about one of the programs that they have just launched. So your speakers on the call, so these are the Mass DEC programs are Solarize Mass Plus and HeatSmart Massachusetts. These are your speakers on the call. On the top one there, Meg, my colleague Lisa is going to talk today, and then Amanda from National Grid. So you have all of our emails here. We'll send these slides around after to everyone who attended. And if you have any specific questions, you can reach out to the program emails that are in this presentation or to us specifically. So an agenda, first let me do some logistics. We're going to go through all this content, and then we'll have some time at the end. We're hoping to leave a good bit of time for your questions and answers. We'll ask you to write them in to the question box through GoToWebinar. So at any point, if you have a question as we're going along, go ahead, type it in. We probably won't get to it until the end, but type it in as it comes to you, and we'll review them at the end. So quick agenda, we're going to give a little overview of Mass DEC, talk about our community programs, Solarize and HeatSmart, and then go through how to actually apply to those programs, a very quick technology overview of what technologies are included in these programs, and then we'll hear from Amanda about the new Mass Save Municipal Partners program. And then we'll have a little bit of a discussion. I know we're going to throw a lot at you between Solarize, HeatSmart, and the Mass Save Municipal Partners. A little bit of discussion about how to pick what's right for your community, or if you have some idea of melding them all, you can reach out and talk to us, and we'll see if we can figure out how to shape something that's right for your community, and then we'll save time for questions and answers. So first, just real quick about Mass DEC. We are primarily funded through the Renewable Energy Trust, which is a surcharge on everyone's electric utility bill. That was created in '97, and then in 2008 and 2009, Mass Clean Energy Center was created, and the Renewable Energy Trust was moved over to us. And then a couple other little fun facts about us. We actually operate a wind blade test facility in Charlestown in Boston. We get big, I think our longest one now is 120-yard blades, longer than a football field. And we also own a terminal in New Bedford that is meant to be a staging ground for the offshore wind industry, which ties into kind of our broader mission. Some of you may know us in the past from these programs like Solarize Mass. We have other efforts to support clean energy economy in Massachusetts, including actually investing in some local companies, as well as giving other grants to startup companies, doing workforce training. So if anything about clean energy and economic development in Massachusetts, reach out to us, and we might be the right people to talk to. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Lisa Dobbs to give an overview of our Solarize and HeatSmart programs.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Meg, for that introduction. Yeah, so just going to give a high-level overview of both of the programs and some of the details around them and some of the areas they may or may not overlap as well. So high-level overview, these are all community education and group purchasing programs for various clean energy technologies. So the idea is you're going out into the community, educating them about these technologies and ideally helping folks move towards adoption. It's typically targeting residential and small commercial customers. And, like I said, being a community-based program, it relies heavily on community volunteers and municipal support, so likely a lot of the folks on the call here today. So just a quick background on our community clean energy programs in Massachusetts. I think a lot of you might be familiar with the Solarize Mass program that was launched back in 2011. So that's been ongoing since then. Starting in 2017, we launched the Solarize Mass Plus program. That's where we started tying in some more clean energy technologies along with solar PV. The year following that, in 2018, we launched the HeatSmart Mass pilot. So starting to get into targeting clean heating and cooling as a part of these community-based campaigns. Now ongoing right now in 2019, we've got both Solarize Mass Plus, and also another round of HeatSmart Mass. So we've got a whole bunch of communities participating currently, and I think we'll probably show you that on a few slides as well. And now we've got another round open, and that's probably why you were all here today, which is 2020, to talk about the way that program is going to work this year, which is very similar to previous years, but we're going to give a couple of little updates as well. There's our programs there. So very quickly, again, I mentioned Solarize was launched in 2011, so we've been in a total of 72 different communities and have run 82 unique campaigns. I know that's a little tricky there on that slide, but it's essentially that's denoting that there are quite a few communities, 10 in total, that have participated more than once. They did Solarize Mass and then did Solarize Mass Plus afterwards. Responsible for over 3,500 solar PV systems and over 23 megawatts worth of solar PV capacity. We've currently got 7 communities participating in the 2019 round, and obviously have now about to open and get folks in for the 2020 round as well. So also want to take a quick look at who's participating, both who's participated and who is participating in HeatSmart currently. So here on this map, this is a demonstration of those that participated in the initial pilot. Bolton and Harvard, Concord, Carlisle, and Lincoln, Great Barrington, and Nantucket. Now currently for the 2019 program, we have the communities of Hudson and Stowe, Arlington and Winchester, Belmont, and also Marshfield. And those campaigns will likely be ongoing probably through the end of this year, maybe even early into next year. And they're doing, all of these campaigns are doing running the gamut with all of the different clean heating and cooling technologies, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation. So very quickly also on the model, just wanted to talk about how the program is designed in the sense of the fact that it's really a partnership between a lot of different players, and that's what really makes the program successful. So to begin with, you've got Mass CEC and DOER, Department of Energy Resources. We work together to facilitate this program and administer the program as well. We put out the request for proposals. We also engage technical consultants on the community's behalf to help with various levels of the campaigns. So it's a little bit different in each of the programs. We also help facilitate the installer RFP and selection process, which is one of those key components of the program, and also provide marketing funds and various forms of education as well. And we'll dig into some of those details further on in the presentation. So another key partner, as many of you may all be aware, is you've got your community organizers. So you've got that key group of volunteers that essentially is helping really launch and run these types of campaigns and do all the outreach that helps make group purchasing models like this very successful. So your community organizers are responsible for doing the competitive installer selection. Typically, you're going to have a group that's comprised of a solar coach, a HeatSmart coach, municipal representatives. They're a key player in this as well, and then various levels of volunteers and folks helping with outreach. So another key partner in the program is your community selected installer. So they're essentially your technical expert in this program as well. So they're going to come on board, help provide free site assessments for the various technologies, whichever ones you select based on your program, talk to the community members about pricing, and then really a turnkey contractor in the sense of they're taking you from initial contract all the way through installation, and beyond. Critical component as well here. And then, of course, you have the community member. So that's everyone that you're going to do that outreach to during the course of a program. And they are also going to be critical as well because they're going to help continue to spread the word about the program and get more folks interested in both learning about the technologies and, adopting them as well. So again, like we mentioned, it's a group purchase model. And really what that comes down to, like I mentioned, is it's really tapping into the grassroots networks in each of these different communities. And it's really a proven model to increase education, enhance outreach. This type of model also, like I mentioned before, has a competitive installer selection. So, when you've got a community vetted installer as a part of your program, what that's really doing is helping simplify what could potentially be seen as a complicated process when trying to learn about and adopt the technology. So you've got a pre-selected installer that a community member can really feel comfortable with, that's been technically vetted, has been vetted by folks in the community. And that type of model also really helps simplify that process. Typically what's also going to happen as a part of this program as well, especially on the Solarize side, you're going to see significantly reduced costs because of, again, you've got those economies of scale that's really allowing the installer to, drop prices. And what it's also doing, especially on the HeatSmart end, is it's really helping also create transparent pricing. So understanding what's going into the cost of these technology systems, and a lot of times installers as well, especially on the HeatSmart side, their pricing may still hang around, some of the regional averages, but a lot of times they're actually able to reduce their own costs as a part of the program. So that's a really nice function of this model as well. And again, this of course is a short-term length of a program. So what that's also doing is it's moving folks to action. They're reducing time to contract. Sometimes folks may sit on a contract for a year, maybe two. They're not quite sure. When they've only got, let's say, 6 months to sign a contract, that's really going to help them just take that final step. And a proven model to increase adoption, as we've seen over many of the years of both of these programs. So this is something that is present in the RFP for those that have reviewed it. But just wanted to do a quick high-level overview on sort of the expectations around the timeline and kind of what happens throughout the course of a program. So essentially, right now we're in a process where we're educating folks about the program. The program is open for applications, and we're awaiting the applications that will be due on November 15th. What essentially will happen after that, just like we've got in this first time frame here, is we're going to do a review of these proposals and do a competitive selection and select those that we feel will be the best fit with the amount of slots that we have. Ideally, we're going to go ahead and announce these communities in early 2020, so probably January 2020. What will happen after that for the selected communities is we'll offer a volunteer training. There'll also be some early stage promotion alongside this while the communities are essentially selecting their installers. So the next step after that is, like I mentioned before, we are going to facilitate the installer RFP and selection process. So we'll go ahead and put out an installer RFP on behalf of all of the communities to help them do that competitive installer selection. So that'll also launch around January 2020. We'll get those proposals about a month later. Interviews will happen in March, and then the installers will be on board come March and April. And then that's when, I mentioned there's a limited time for this program. So the next step in that process is to open up the sign-up period, which essentially means the program is open, the installer is selected, everybody gets to go ahead and learn about their opportunity for the program, get their site visits. And that's when, both the education and outreach are happening, as well as that's typically when that, competitively discounted price is also going to be available, but only during that time frame. So what will happen after that is there is going to be an end date to the program. And so, depending on when the program is launched, we sort of anticipate that things will maybe launch April, May 2020, and will be ongoing through September, through maybe December 2020, based on community preference. So essentially what you're looking at, and especially with the expectation around this, is you're looking at about a year kind of end-to-end with both kind of application, gearing up to launch the program, selecting your installer, running the program, and then closing that program out. So that's just a little bit of a kind of a high-level expectation there as well to kind of set the stage for, what's to come in the next year. So very quickly, and this is all detailed in the RFP as well, but just wanted to provide some information on some of the direct support that we are offering you through a program like this. So again, based on what types of technologies you might be interested in or some various factors about your community, we'll be offering a direct marketing budget anywhere from $5,000 to $13,000. Definitely check out the RFP for the different levels of eligibility that you may have. We'll provide various levels of physical collateral, usually things like T-shirts and banners. And then we'll also provide some template marketing materials and informational resources. Like I mentioned before, we are going to directly facilitate and launch that installer RFP on your behalf. And we'll also contract with selected installers. That's just a nice peace of mind for folks to know that it doesn't have to be the community that's contracting with the installer. We'll do that on your behalf. We also provide a technical consultant. That was something I mentioned earlier. And they come in on various ways depending on the program, which we'll detail in a little bit. But essentially, they're going to help with the technical vetting and really help you go through the installer selection process. They'll be your kind of project manager on that, and a really great help to help support you through that process. And also for both for HeatSmart specifically, they're also going to be engaged a little bit more in terms of helping more directly with marketing, developing marketing materials, helping develop a website. And also be a sort of an ongoing technical and other types of resources throughout the program. And just as a quick note on this as well, for individual installations, so when we're talking about, somebody, homeowner has just gotten their install, your Mass CEC essentially expects that your installer is going to be your technical expert. So even though both, a technical consultant and Mass CEC will help along the way, once you're sort of in that realm, that's when your installer is going to be the technical expert for any individual installation. So just a note there on that. Great. And so with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Meg to talk specifically in a little bit more detail on how to apply to the program.
Thanks, Lisa. So timeline, I think you've all seen this in our announcement email, but our RFP for communities was released on September 25th. Here we are on October 7th having this webinar as a chance to answer questions. If you think of other questions later, feel free to submit written questions through the 18th. We'll make sure all those answers are posted by October 25th, and then proposals will be due on November 15th. And this page has the links to the HeatSmart and the Solarize websites with the full documents, which we'll go look at in a minute. And then these are also the program emails. You had our emails at the beginning, and these are program emails that you can email. And in fact, this is where you'll email the applications too. So a couple notes about HeatSmart and then Solarize in terms of what we're planning for this round. If you were to apply to HeatSmart, you would go through and select which of the 4 clean heating and cooling technologies your community wanted to promote. And it could be one, it could be all 4, anywhere in between. We'll talk a little bit more about how you might go about doing that. HeatSmart is a little bit unique that all cities and towns in Massachusetts are eligible. We have a different funding source for that than our main renewable energy trust, which is also part of the reason Lisa was mentioning that there's a little more technical consultant support for HeatSmart. The other part of the reason is we have found these clean heating and cooling technologies to be a little more complicated. So I think it's merited, but that's the behind the scenes reason also. So for 2020, we're looking for 3 communities or groups of municipalities. So for example, this round we have Arlington and Winchester working together. That would count as 1 slot of the 3. We recommend probably not going more than 3 towns. I think if you have some great history of working together with 4 or more towns, we're open to discussing it. Just in experience with Solarize and HeatSmart, we've found it's more difficult to coordinate between more towns, so probably keeping it to 3 is typically a good number. I know that you don't have to be a green community or have participated in Solarize to do HeatSmart. And also wanted to highlight that home energy assessments are a really important part of this campaign, where you're thinking about how to decarbonize people's heating. It's important that the actual envelope of their home is tight, and so that you're installing an appropriately sized heating system that can operate efficiently. We're going to repeat this a couple times, just that applications are due November 15th. So on the Solarize Plus side, if you're going down this route, you would select a solar PV technology plus 1 additional technology, and it could be all the additional technologies. We'll talk about those in a minute. So we are asking this time that communities do at least 1 other technology in addition to solar PV. If that really feels out of reach for your community, reach out and talk to us. But we are looking for 3 communities or groups of municipalities that would do solar PV plus 1 other technology. And this Solarize Mass Plus is only eligible to towns that pay into the Renewable Energy Trust. So that's mostly if your electric utility provider is National Grid or Eversource or Unitil. There are also 5 municipal light plants that pay into that Renewable Energy Trust. I'm going to embarrass myself and not get them all now, but I think I'm not going to try it. I don't want to be wrong. But it's on our website, and there's 5 additional towns or municipal light plants that do pay into Renewable Energy Trust for this program. And yeah, applications are due November 15th. And we just wanted to note that we are open to innovative program designs. I think you've seen we tried to expand beyond solar PV to new technologies, into heating. If there's something we haven't covered or you want to do some other combination, please reach out and talk to us. One first example we're going to give here is we have Mass Save on the phone, and Amanda will talk a little bit about their program. And I think we're both interested in exploring if there were a town that wanted to promote, let's say, both home energy improvements as well as solar PV at the same time, and do both campaigns simultaneously. We'd be interested in seeing if something like that could work. All other possible ideas would be maybe a focus on new construction if your town had a lot of development that was happening. If you had a partnership you wanted to propose with a local financial or higher education institution. On the heating side, maybe you really want to focus on whole home heating versus maybe supplemental heat pumps. for PV, you really want to focus on west-facing solar PV. If there's some load demand in your area that might help with. So these are a few of our ideas, but I'm sure you all can think of many more. So if you have something that's a little bit different than what's in the RFP, please reach out to us and discuss. And we definitely are interested in talking about that. So what's in an application? We ask for a letter of support from your municipal chief executive officer. That can be a mayor, it can sometimes be a board of selectmen, just depending on how your town or city is set up. There's an application form, we'll go to these in a minute, that has basically a couple different narratives, a place for you to fill in a marketing plan and things like that. There's a form for you to sign. Then that will be signed by your municipal government, and then there's a separate form for the coach to sign. So this coach, I think Lisa talked about it some in the role. This campaign is heavily dependent on volunteers, and we usually look for there to be one or even a couple co-coaches of people to really be those point person, between us and all the rest of the volunteers in the community. And we have seen good success with kind of a co-coach model to help spread the load a little bit. We don't want it to be too burdensome on anyone, but I think having that champion we found is really important for success. So we want to hear from who that champion is going to be and kind of what their commitment is to this kind of campaign. There's other forms that are optional, but if there's other volunteers who are kind of ready to sign up at this point, or other local organizations or institutions that want to sign up and talk about how, or send us a letter and talk about how they are planning to support this campaign, we're always glad to receive those. And then we'll talk a little bit more, but we really recommend that you do a survey of residents to kind of gauge interest in this campaign as part of the application. And then you don't have to do anything besides check a box, but we ask that everyone who apply review our community contract so that once, if you were selected, we could just send the contract over to you and it could get signed quickly. Or if you do have any questions, that you raise them to us at this point. And that's a community contract between Mass CEC and your town or city, just saying that we're going to work together on this campaign. So it's pretty boilerplate language, but we want to make sure it's gone to your town government as part of this application process. And then we also have a best practices guide for the kickoff, so that if you were selected again, you'd kind of be ready to hit the ground running. And we have a program background section of the website, so I'm going to actually go to that right now. That has some more supporting documents. So let's jump over. You can go to it from our website, or just if you want to Google HeatSmart Mass or Solarize Mass. Let's see, I have here Solarize Mass. I think the website is actually solarizemass.com, but you can just Google it and it should take you here. And so this is a little bit who's eligible, but how do I apply section is going to be the key section that has those documents that we were just talking about in terms of the actual request for proposals itself, as well as the application form. And then a little bit below, and then information about how to actually apply. So here we are. You do all the background materials, which are below. We'll get to in a minute. You're on the webinar. Great job. Ask us questions in writing, or call us up if you want. And then to submit the proposal by November 15th. So in terms of program background, what we have is a little bit of history of the program, some results from the pilot, and then a whole resource kit here. So one of the main things you'll want to pay attention to is we have the marketing proposal for every community that's gone through Solarize. So if you want to take a look, especially if there's a community that feels similar to yours for whatever reason, see what they propose to do. These are a great way to get started, so you don't feel like you're reinventing the wheel from scratch. Some other things that are as part of this program background is information about some of the other technologies that we'll talk about in a minute, like solar hot water, air source heat pumps, electric vehicles, as well as a template letter if you have a organization in your town that is going to support you, maybe by providing meeting space, or it's a volunteer network that's going to come out and turn up at the farmers markets for you. This is a template of a letter they could sign. Again, they're free to customize it as much as they want, but just something to get you started. So nothing too crazy, but just some example of what we've seen in the past, as well as some questions you could ask in a survey. And Lisa will talk a little bit more about these later on, but we have found them to be really helpful up front, so you're just going into a campaign with a sense of what your community is interested in, and then a group of leads right off the bat, as well as some potential volunteers. So these are just example questions we've seen asked to help gauge interest. And this will also help you decide which of the technologies you want to focus on for your community. So really quick overview, sorry. Other technologies, I think we've kind of alluded to this up to this point, but for Solarize Mass Plus, it would be promoting solar PV with one of the other technologies listed here. So either or solar hot water, air source heat pumps, which are also called mini split heat pumps, battery backup. So in this case, we're talking about home batteries, which is something that is starting to come out on the market, and there's starting to be some incentive programs from our utilities for homes that want to install a battery, and that has an advantage to you as a homeowner, that you have some resiliency if the grid were to go down, you know, sort of similar to a generator, but you've kind of got some electricity stored up in your house. And then if you let them control it, it also has an advantage to the utility, that it helps them smooth out the big peaks and valleys in our electric demand throughout the day by letting them, you know, charge and discharge the battery at the kind of off-peak times. And next would be electric vehicles. So if you want to have a group purchasing campaign around electric vehicles, I think we're seeing some this year going well. I'm looking at Lisa. I think we're off to a good start. And, you know, if there's something else on this list we haven't thought of that you think pairs well with solar PV, you know, we're really looking for something that has a kind of logical pairing, either in terms of electrification with the PV that generates a renewable electricity, or in the case of solar hot water, just another technology that's going on the roof, and, you know, you kind of efficiently using that solar energy hitting the roof to reduce the home's energy usage. And then in terms of HeatSmart Mass, these are the 4 eligible technologies. So I'll just talk a little bit more. Cold climate air source heat pumps is a way of heating and cooling your home by moving heat from the indoors to the outdoors, or vice versa. And so because it's just moving heat, not generating heat, it's able to be 2 to 3 times more efficient than electric resistance heat. Kind of like the electric vehicle of heating, it's a great way to you know, electrify heat now. It's already more efficient, less carbon intensive than, say, burning natural gas in your home. And then going forward throughout the life of the heat pump, it will only get cleaner as our grid gets more renewable energy on it. Ground source heat pump is a very similar idea of a technology, but instead of moving the heat back and forth between an outdoor condenser, it moves it back and forth between the ground. So either you can have a horizontal loop field that kind of goes out over, takes a large horizontal area, or else if you have more limited space, you can drill these wells down pretty deep, hundreds of feet deep down in the ground, but that means you need a much more limited space. And then a third option is modern wood heating. So, you know, if you're thinking kind of like a wood stove, this is a much more modern automated version of that, where you're still relying on a local wood economy, but you're not kind of loading up your stove yourself. It's something that sits in your basement, more like a boiler. You get pellets delivered to your home automatically. They feed into this boiler. You wouldn't have to touch it, you know, kind of like an oil or gas boiler. The only thing you might have to do is maybe 2 or 3 times a year empty an ash bucket. So kind of just be like taking out the trash. And the nice thing about this technology is, like I said, it is supporting a local forestry economy. And here in Massachusetts, we do have regulations about the kind of fuel that can be burned and still count as renewable in these appliances. So you can buy buy fuel that has a verification on its sourcing, so you can understand and understand it has a sustainable sourcing for the actual wood that's produced. And then solar hot water, where you're using the radiation from the sun to heat up water or a fluid for your domestic hot water instead of creating electricity with it like you do in solar PV. So that's a real brief overview of the Solarize and the HeatSmart technologies. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Amanda to talk about the Mass Save Municipal Partnership. And Amanda, if you want to just tell me to advance the slides as you get to them, I will do that.
Great, thanks. Hey, everybody, and good afternoon. Megan, Lisa, thanks for inviting me to be on this call with all of you today. So just briefly, my name's Amanda Formica. I work in residential energy efficiency with National Grid. And just about Mass Save. So National Grid, together with our other privately owned utilities and Cape Light Compact around the Massachusetts, we are the energy efficiency program administrators, the PAs, and Mass Save is the brand that we use to identify ourselves together and the energy efficiency programs that we administer, so that it's easier for residents and businesses to kind of get involved. And there is not unlike Mass CEC, what Meg was talking about, there is a small charge on your gas and electric bill, or anybody's gas and electric bill, that is specifically for energy efficiency. And it goes into one big pot of money. And our job is to make sure that all of that gets out to as many people as possible through all of these programs that are incentivized to increase energy efficiency. So Mass Save Municipal Partnership, it's a new initiative, a new effort that we've started that'll be for 2020, starting January 2020, to help basically get municipalities, strengthen relationships between PAs and municipalities, and increase the reach of energy efficiency programs, particularly outreach to some hard to reach groups. So there's a lot of focus right now on equity in our current 3-year energy efficiency plan. And so the idea is that we want to provide you as towns and cities with tools to help reach more renters, moderate income, so 60 to 80% of state median income customers, limited English proficiency residents, and small businesses with energy efficiency, and encourage localized and creative forms of outreach in order to do that and provide an award for participating. And so this is experimental, and we're hoping that a lot of great initiatives and ideas come out of it from the cities and towns that participate that can be used in the future. And it will be repeated again in 2021. And for anybody, any towns who've participated in the National Grid Community Initiative in the past who might be on this call, this is part of the National Grid Community Initiative will be part of this municipal partnership for next year. So this just has some of the basic information. To learn more, there are a lot more details that you can get on that link that says more information on that slide. We're accepting statements of interest. That's the best way to start your application through the end of almost the end of the month, the 30th of October. You can do that right on that link that's there on the bottom of the slide. And then the full application is due by November 6th, and you can email that to that info@masssave.com email address. And again, all that information is on the website. Next slide. Next slide. Thanks. So this is just a picture of the statement of interest form. It's super simple. It's right there on the URL, again, on the previous slide. We do ask that this come from a municipal point of contact. It could include an energy committee member, just to let us know that you're planning on applying. Next slide. And so this is open to all municipalities in Massachusetts, as long as you have, as long as you're served by one of the Mass Save program administrators. And the award amounts, so there's at the beginning of the calendar year, in January, you'll receive $2,000, and then the rest of the remaining amount of the award will be at the end of the calendar year, and it's by population in your city or town. And so it's outlined kind of right there what you would be eligible for. And then let's see, next slide. Yeah, it's on a point system, so you work to earn up to 100 points. If you don't end up earning all 100 points by the end of the calendar year, that's okay. You'll get a percentage of the award that your municipality is eligible for. And again, the idea is around increasing participation for those same groups that I mentioned: small businesses, moderate income customers, limited English proficiency, and renters. And for people who might be wondering, what about low-income customers? That's really important too. We outline in the application that we definitely are going to help you make sure you're connected with your local lean or community action program agency to make sure you're reaching those folks as well. Next slide. So this kind of just outlines some of the resources that we're going to be providing. This effort, the municipal partnership, will be open to at least 6, we'll be accepting at least 6 municipalities for 2020 across the state. And we're looking for a real diversity of different types of cities and towns. And this is kind of a summary of some of the resources that we'll be providing. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible for your town to participate. And we'll be providing information about, you might be wondering about as far as achieving your goals. We'll be providing information about 2018 and 2019 so that you know what does it really look like to increase my participation by 5% for online energy assessments, for example. I think that's about it. And I would encourage you to visit that URL again over there to find out more about the application, just a letter of endorsement from a town administrator, and kind of a plan for outreach and information about your point of contact for the city or town, and volunteers that you plan to involve, as well as local organizations that you might plan to collaborate with. So a lot of similarities, hopefully, to what you'll see in the Mass CEC application. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda. So we know we've thrown a lot out at you in terms of Solarize, HeatSmart, Mass Save, municipal partners. So we thought we'd have a couple tips on how you could start to figure out which is the right campaign for your own community to tackle. But of course, ultimately, it will be up to you.
Yeah, so, you know, Meg touched upon it before when she was taking a look at some of those resources that we offer online. But, you know, one thing that we feel can be very helpful is to do a survey. So actually just reach out to the folks in your community and kind of learn what they're interested in, what they've been exploring, what their needs might be. And so we offer that template online that gives you some ideas of questions to ask, questions that communities have asked before. And what this also does, again, as discussed a little bit earlier, is this also helps bring, you know, that group purchasing model aspect into it, because then you start with a leads list that you can offer to a you know, an installer, and they can sort of start to gauge, you know, what their pricing might be. And the more folks that are interested in, you know, any of these technologies early on, you know, the better, you know, better pricing you're going to have. And what it'll also help offer to you is it's actually a great way to begin seeking volunteers. Some folks have actually, you know, got, you know, their HeatSmart or Solarize coach through, you know, either a survey or a press release or something like that. So it's a really great way to also even get somebody like we might, we've sort of coined a term like a kind of like a clean energy ambassador or a solar ambassador, where you may have somebody that has already adopted this technology, but might be a great resource to host an open house or to be on a panel to talk about their experience. So there's really a lot you can really gauge from doing a survey early on as you're starting to explore a program like this.
Another thing to think about for your city or town is what kind of heating fuels are most prevalent in your community. Households that heat with either oil or propane or electric resistance tend to have the highest cost heating fuels, and therefore will look the most attractive to switch over to some clean heating and cooling options. So if you're thinking along the line of HeatSmart or else including air source heat pumps with PV, you might want to take a look. We have a map on our website that shows you can look up your town and see what the percentage of high-cost heating fuel is, or you can go yourself to the census and dig into this information a little bit more.
Another thing to consider as well is, the level of penetration of solar in your community. And I think both things work in terms of maybe having a lower level of penetration. This might be a good step for you to consider something like Solarize because you want to teach more folks about it and help increase the adoption. But also, on the other side, having more solar PV penetration is actually a great key indicator that you might be ready to do something like Solarize Mass Plus, where you can sort of capitalize on those that have already adopted, that one technology and are ready to kind of take that next step and that next action with some of those additional technologies. Or what that also, alludes to as well is a really great potential for something like HeatSmart, because again, you've got, that engaged audience who has, started to adopt the PV, and again, maybe they're ready to take that next step and start exploring, further ways to reduce their, energy costs at home or decarbonize their homes and things like that. So, a really great opportunity there, kind of on both ends of the spectrum. So.
And then a few other considerations. Put this in on Amanda's behalf, so she may have more to add. If your municipality does have below average historic participation in some of the Mass Save programs, I know that's definitely something they're looking to target. So if you think that might apply, and then like Amanda said, there's some categories like the moderate income, high levels of renters, maybe people who don't speak English as a first language, are all important demographics that they're looking to target through the Mass Save program specifically, and also would be good targets for Solarize or HeatSmart. Another thing to think about is if there's kind of other community energy or sustainability initiatives that might tie into this. For example, I'm showing an image there. Belmont has a strategic electrification plan where they've thought through, okay, we want to be switching people from oil heating onto heat pumps and then from gas heating onto heat pumps, and we want to do this thing with EVs. So they're doing HeatSmart this year as a way to really jumpstart their air source heat pumps in their town. So that kind of tied into a different planning effort that they had. Just to reiterate, like we said, there's a survey, but ultimately I think you who work and live in these cities and towns probably know your city or town best and know what's already been done, what might resonate well. And of course, we're always happy to be resources. So if you think you might want to do something but want to talk through some options, please do reach out to us. And Amanda, is there anything else you wanted to add here?
No, well, I'm happy to take any questions too, and folks can get in touch with me as well.
And then we're just going to end here with a little summarized table of some of the different things we've talked about for each of the programs. So Solarize Mass Plus, HeatSmart Mass, run by Mass CEC and Department of Energy Resources, the Municipal Partnership Program run by Mass Save. Here's a list of the eligible technologies under each program. Eligible municipalities, it's slightly different for each three. The most expansive being HeatSmart. Every town and city in Massachusetts is eligible. Solarize Mass Plus, it's if you pay into the Renewable Energy Trust, and then for the municipal partnership, it's if you're served by an investor-owned utility. The deadline for the application is November 15th for the Mass CEC programs, November 6th for the Mass Save programs. Mass Save is going to move a little bit quicker than us in actually selecting the communities that will move forward. So if you are someone who's thinking maybe you wanted to do the Mass Save program and one of the Mass CEC programs, definitely reach out to us in this application process. And knowing these timelines are slightly different but somewhat aligned, we'll do our best to kind of talk through with you what that could look like and brainstorm. Open to being flexible to the extent we can. If you did want to do both campaigns, what that could look like. So I think I'll leave it here. I'll leave it on the summary table for now, just as a reference point for people, and then we'll jump into the questions that have been coming in typed up. Okay, so starting from the top, this question probably I'll give it to Lisa. We had a community that did Solarize in 2017 and had heard that you couldn't reapply. Is that no longer true, or can you reapply?
Yeah, so really good question, and actually something we didn't point out, so really appreciate you bringing that up. So through 2016, communities were not allowed to apply again, you're correct, but then actually once we launched Plus actually in 2017 is when we allowed communities to essentially come back again, especially because we sort of revamped the program a little bit. So now the way it works is you're absolutely able to participate again. The only limitation is you just can't have immediately participated in a round of either program. So if you're interested in Plus, but you, let's say, just completed Solarize in 2018, or I guess 2019, I should say, you're currently active, right? You can't then go and apply again for 2020. So it's just that sort of a little bit of a cooling off period, a resting period, if you will. So that's the only limitation there. But yes, you absolutely can apply again to either program.
The next question says, initially HeatSmart was a pilot, and so there were only, it was initially 4 communities that were selected as part of the pilot. And the question was if we're still limiting the number of communities. And we are, just because of our available budget. So we're looking to select 3 Solarize Mass Plus communities this year and 3 HeatSmart communities. So a total of 6 communities. I think I heard Amanda say they were also thinking of a total of 6 communities for the Mass Save Municipal Partners program. The next question is about, what is the smallest scale of a community that's acceptable? Can a neighborhood apply? That's a great question. Yes, if there's enough people. So I'm trying to remember. We had I think at least 1,000 people. We were looking for campaigns of at least 1,000 people, so you kind of get that critical mass to have the group purchasing model work. So for some towns, that's the entire town, and then for some cities like Boston, that would be less than one neighborhood. So neighborhoods could apply. We would just want to see that neighborhood had at least 1,000 people in it. And it could also be a couple neighborhoods within a larger town or city.
And I think I'll just throw one additional thing out there as well, and just that if you've kind of got something specific in mind and you're not quite sure, and you're kind of like, just throw the question out to us, and we'll help work through whether or not that would be a good fit. So please just reach out and we'll have that discussion.
The next question is just about any kind of clean energy will still have some impacts, and wondering how conservation fits into all of these programs, which is a great question. It is something we try and emphasize. So obviously, if you're doing the Mass Save Municipal Partners program, that would be the explicit focus of part of those points on that rubric that Amanda showed. And then even for the HeatSmart and Solarize programs that aren't specifically about things like insulation and air sealing, we really do encourage and try and educate around having people go get those home energy assessments and follow through and do the air sealing and insulation and weatherization, just so, if you are putting in a heat pump, you're right sizing it because you've sealed up your home, or even if you're putting in solar PV, you're not putting in extra, that you're reducing the electrical demand on your home before you put in PV. So it's definitely something we're trying to educate around as much as possible, and definitely look to our community volunteers to spread that message that when we're talking to people, we're not just talking in silos. Even if there's just a single focus of the campaign, there's a conversation, there's resources for a broader conversation. how big could a small commercial business be? We don't have a strict definition on this. I think we get pricing for residential systems from these installers. So in terms of having fixed pricing, you're probably going to be looking at something that is residential scale, where they could install that same kind of equipment or size of equipment, whatever it is. But it's really then up to the community and the selected installer to define that a little better. If the installer does do larger commercial work and they'd be interested in offering that, maybe there wouldn't be a fixed price, but they could still do those jobs. And that would be something that would come out in part of the installer selection and interview process. Anything you'd want to add to that, Lisa?
No, that sounds about right. It's certainly not strictly limited. It's just sometimes commercial systems can sometimes just take longer to contract, for example. So that's why we sort of target on the one end. But we've certainly seen larger scale systems come through the program in something like Solarize. So if that's a focus you all are interested in, ask a question or put that in the application, and we can have that discussion.
The next question is about towns with a Board of Selectmen structure. Is a warrant article before town meeting required? I don't think I've ever seen one. So we've seen letters from a Board of Selectmen, signed by multiple people. I don't think we've ever had towns actually go out to a town meeting to put it up for a vote. Have you ever seen that, Lisa?
That they have to?
That they went out to a town meeting to be able to sign that letter?
In terms of actually signing, I'm not sure. I definitely think that it really depends on your municipal structure and kind of the rules surrounding it. I do think a lot of communities do seek that approval from their Board of Selectmen as just kind of a part of the process. But I think that's probably a good question to go in and ask within your municipality to say, hey, we're interested in this. What do you propose we need to do to get the CEO or to get the backing of the municipality? So,
and if you're running into any out to us, we've dealt with a lot of different communities, and our legal team here can also, serve as a resource if you are running into roadblocks. The next question is how these programs play with community choice green aggregation programs. I would say that they're a great complement to it, especially if you were doing something like electric vehicles or heat pumps that, you're increasing your electric load, but now the residents have an opportunity to select more renewable energy for that electrical load. I guess you could question if you had 100% renewable energy choice, do you still want to do PV? I think there's still a good financial incentive for people to actually have the PV on their house. But in general, I would say it probably complements that. As you clean up your electricity, it just makes a lot of these technologies that we're talking about even cleaner themselves. The next question is, what % of community plans have been accepted? So I'll start with HeatSmart. We did the pilot round, like I said, in 2018. We accepted 2/3 of the communities that applied. For this current round, we accepted all the communities that applied, and that was 4 each time for those rounds. We now have 3 slots for this round based on our current budget. So that's what it's been in the past. I'm not sure what kind of response we'll get this year, but in the past it's been accepting most applicants. And Solarize, we previously haven't been limiting it based on budget, but we are this year. So again, it hasn't, we've been able to accept almost everyone in Solarize in the past, but we'll just see what we get in this year. It may be everyone, it may not. Can towns apply for Solarize Plus if they haven't done Solarize but have done solar promotion programs of another sort? You want to take that one, Lisa?
Yeah, sure. So really good question. And yes, participating in Solarize Mass, what you might say, quote unquote, the traditional original one does not limit you to going into Solarize Mass Plus. So it's open to anyone as long as you're in the Renewable Energy Trust. So no previous experience or participation in those programs, although something like that may help. it may help demonstrate that you're able to take on a campaign like this, but again, not a strict requirement.
Next question is if we see a synergy with doing both solar and HeatSmart programs in one location application round. So I think you probably wouldn't do both in one round, because with the Solarize Plus option there is, if you wanted to do solar PV, you could add on some of the heating and cooling technologies as a plus without having to do two different campaigns, and that's probably just to save you and us the hassle of signing two different contracts and whatever, that you're doing Solarize Plus, but if you want to include a heating technology like solar hot water or air source heat pumps, you could do that under the Solarize Plus framework. Like I did mention, we are interested if there's a community that wants to do HeatSmart or HeatSmart or Solarize in addition to the Mass Save Municipal Partners program. We'd be interested in that pairing of the efficiency side of things with the clean energy technology. Next question, can large new developments apply to add more passive solar housing or clean energy components that they wouldn't otherwise build? That's an interesting question. I think we need to talk in a little bit more detail about what that meant. If that was just a design feature, or if you're thinking maybe solar hot air. Let's talk about that one. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure it's a yes, but I'd be interested in discussing it. And then the next question is, can we provide a summary of incentives? So I know we're at time now. We'll follow up maybe when we send around an email after this with these slides with some links about incentives on all of these technologies. Why isn't ground source included in the program? So ground source is definitely included in HeatSmart. It wasn't one of the listed technologies in Solarize Mass Plus. I think if there was a town that really wanted to do it, we'd be open to talking about that, but it's definitely included under HeatSmart. Since we're at the time, and I think we're actually, the last question here is, what additional savings can these programs garner for residents? We'll include some of that in the follow-up along with incentives. Like Lisa mentioned, we have seen, especially on the Solarize, like solar PV side, some good discounts off of state prices through that group purchasing model. On HeatSmart, because of some differences in the HVAC industry, we haven't seen as much of a savings, but we still have seen pretty good regional average prices with a high quality vetted installer. So we'll send around some information, and if you have more follow-ups, we're happy to set up a time to talk. So I think we're going to jump off the line now, but please, thank you for joining us today, and please do reach out if you think of any more questions. All right, thanks everyone. Take care. Ooh.